Hi, Molly.
Hello. Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Just
Doing well,
adjusting
thanks.
so my head doesn't get cut off.
Right? Or at least you weren't the cat with the cat filter. Did you
Yes.
see that? The lawyer who had the filter that his
Yes.
assistant's daughter put on?
Oh
At
my
least
gosh,
he won the case.
that was hilarious.
I
That was
know.
really cute.
That's one of those moments in COVID that we all kind of remember.
Yes. Oh, that was so cute.
That could totally happen to me, and I
Yeah.
wouldn't know how to do it. My kids can do amazing things to our phone. In fact, while we're waiting for folks to join us, our kids got one of our iPods. Was it an iPod or iPhone? I don't even remember because we haven't been able to turn it on. And they entered so many wrong passwords that it ended up freezing for like 40,000 or 400,000 minutes or something like that.
Oh
And
my
we
gosh.
calculated it in years, and both my husband and I aren't going to be around.
Oh
so,
my goodness.
so
How on
every once in
earth
a
did
while,
that happen?
no idea, kids being kids. So every once in a while we find it and we turn it on and we check the countdown, and it's just hilarious.
Oh my goodness. Thank God
Yeah.
it was an iPad or an iPod and not
Yeah,
someone's
right,
personal
right.
phone.
Not someone's personal phone. I'm sure there's a fix for it, but we didn't bother. It's pretty funny.
Yeah,
So
that's hilarious.
yeah, well, thank you for joining us. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. Folks are still coming in and finding us, but so I just want to kind of briefly, this is our first time having an Instagram live with you, but I just want to kind of introduce you to kind of the concept and what we're doing. And the whole point is for us as parents, you know, we do the best we can with the tools we have. And so what we're trying to give parents are more tools for the toolbox. And that today is autism tool. You know, we all have kids and we never know what we get once they come out. And it's really, this topic is really exciting to me because I've worked with some autistic kids myself when I was in college and in the nursery school system. And at my daughter's preschool, they actually have an autism class, which I was surprised by, but it seems that that's probably more the norm now, which is great. But I think this is an opportunity for us to share with folks just kind of answering basic questions for those of us who are different levels of familiarity with autism, and starting with your story and how you came to find your path in the autism field and how you became a consultant.
Yes, so I was a special ed major in college, and right out of school became an autism teacher. And several years in, I realized there is little support for the parents. And I just, dabbled around on social media, and I started a podcast just for fun. I had zero intention of ever leaving the classroom. I thought, oh, if one parent listens to it, I'm helping one parent. Like, I'm happy with that, whatever. And I don't know where the people came from, but they started listening, and it kind of took off. And I thought, wow, parents are seeking that support at home, because
Right.
there are a ton of resources and services for the kids, which is absolutely wonderful and a must. But we can't forget about home. We can't forget about
Right.
parents, and because they are at home for a big chunk of their day. So I knew we needed to fill that gap of those parents needing support. So I was ready to jump in, dive on in, and fill that gap. Oh, hey, Jessica. I love you too. That's one of my clients, Jessica.
Oh, awesome.
Thanks for
And
the
they
love,
love
Jessica.
Molly. Heart, 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 heart. That's awesome.
Oh, thank
Well,
you. So
that's
yeah,
great. Well,
that's how the autism consultant was born. And now it's wild. I think about if I was still a teacher, I would only be impacting maybe 12 kids a school year. Now I'm
right.
able to work with so many more parents. I'm able to work with parents from all over the world, which just still blows my
That's
mind.
great.
Yeah. And so, countries that I've never even visited, I'm now,
Wow.
supporting clients in those countries. And it's just really cool. So I'm
Wow.
very excited about the journey that I'm still on and still growing with.
That is exciting. So let me ask you this. Is there, we'll start kind of broader view. Is there a community for parents of children with autism that they can kind of join, whether it's on Facebook, Instagram, or what have you? where they can kind of get support from other parents going through it that you know of?
So I actually have a community that's a paid program, but I do have lots of free resources as well. So
Okay.
if you are not in a situation where you can pay to work with me, you can look through my social media. I have a ton of tips on there. I have my podcast where I have over 100 episodes there. That's free as well. I have a free masterclass that you can watch, which is about a 30-minute training telling you what you can be doing at home to support your autistic child. But I don't have a specific free community for parents. I do have a community that is a paid group. And if anybody's interested, just reach out to me and we'll chat about how I can support you and what's going on at home.
Great. Okay. All right. Well, let's start with the basics. So can you tell us what is autism?
Yeah, so autism is a neurodevelopmental disorder. So it's very brain-based. So think of, we process information constantly. Every second of every day, we are taking an input and we are processing so much different information. For a child that is autistic, they have different developmental needs going on that is going to make the processing process a little different for them, and they're going to need added supports, and they're going to have differences in things like social interactions with others. They're going to have differences in communications. They're going to have restricted and repetitive behaviors. Like you might see the most common one that people seem to always talk about is things like hand flapping, doing these motions over and over again. And like I said, it's very brain based. And what I like to tell parents is there's nothing wrong with your child. They're not broken. We need to change what we're doing. We need to make some environmental changes around them because, I want everybody to think of their child as a flower. It's so funny because I've thrown away every plant that I own because I don't have a green thumb and I kill every flower, yet I use that analogy. So
that sounds like my produce drawer.
Think of a flower. If it is not taking off and blooming and developing, nobody ever has said, that flower, they just can't develop. Something's wrong with it. No, we look at the environment, sun exposure, the water it's getting. Is it getting the best soil possible? Do we need to trim some of the dead leaves off? Like we take care of everything around it, but nobody blames that flower and says, nope, it's not capable of doing, X, Y, and Z. So I want you to view everything with your child the same way. They are capable of doing anything and everything every other child can do. It's just going to look a little different getting there. Might be a little longer. The process might look different, but we can get there.
I love that.
They just have different processing needs that we need to take into consideration.
That's a really good analogy, the flower. I like that a lot.
Yes. Yeah, it makes things make a little more sense, when we can use it.
It's just a mind flip of perspective of how you look at it. And that's really helpful.
And speaking, I just kicked my camera. And speaking of other mind flips, a lot of the different traits that autistic individuals have are talked about so negatively only in regards to autism. So we think of like hyper-focused, that or like obsessive over something. When somebody describes an autistic child as hyper-focused or obsessive, they're doing it kind of with a negative connotation. There's, a little bit of a downer, with meaning behind their words.
Right.
But, think of like Thomas Edison. Think of when he developed the light bulb. We could have said he was hyper-focused. We could have said he was obsessive because he did it over and over 10,000 times. He did this.
Right.
What if we were to stop him and say, no, stop obsessing on that thing that you're really interested in. Stop obsessing on that thing that you really like. Right. We would all be sitting here in the dark.
In the dark. You're so right. You're so right.
Yeah, so it's totally about a mind switch. Or think about like energetic. They might describe an autistic child as being too energetic. They're too on the move, too all over the place. Okay, let's flip that. Think about the people that we idolize in society. Actors, singers, performers, musicians. What do they have? A lot of energy. But we don't describe those people as energetic in a negative way like we do autistic individuals. So I just, on top of educating parents, I just hope to send a different message out there to people who aren't familiar with autism, so we can help reframe everybody's mind a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I appreciate that for even my own filter and perspective. Now, talk to me about the spectrum. So, as as a parent, and I think in society, we've become familiar with the spectrum. And so, what does the spectrum look like? Because I feel like, and a lot of people say, like, we're all somewhere on the spectrum, right? On a spectrum. But talk to me about the spectrum and how you speak of it, and if it's something that you speak to parents who find their child diagnosed with autism.
Yeah, so, I think of an autistic individual having a million different traits, and
Mm-hmm.
those traits could fall anywhere on a continuum. They might need, a higher level support with one area and no support at all in another. And then
Mm-hmm.
the kid sitting next to them in their class who might be autistic as well, their traits and where they fall in the continuum might look completely different. And I think that's why people get really confused with autism, or really struggle to work with autistic kids sometimes, especially professionals that work with more than one, because they're so different from one kid to the next. And
Right.
the famous saying is, if you've met one kid with autism, you've met one kid with autism, because they're so
Right.
different.
Okay.
And it's like you have to relearn with every kid how to
Mm-hmm.
move about things and how to help that child progress forward. So it's all about finding what that child needs, and knowing that, if we just add the proper supports and support that child in that need, we can help them move forward. And again, like I said, it's just going to look a little bit different, and it just
Mm-hmm.
might take a little bit longer.
Excellent. And is it true that the earlier you're able to be diagnosed, the better? And typically, what ages do you see diagnoses happening, if there is a range?
So I see the ages all over the place. Around 3 is probably the most typical.
Okay.
Wait, I forgot your question. What did you just
Well,
say?
is there a typical age range in which it becomes maybe more prevalent, and then diagnose becomes in that window? And you said it's usually about 3 years old.
Okay,
And is it
yes,
is it a matter of the younger the better for some of the therapies?
that's the question I forgot. So
No worries.
So absolutely, the sooner we can, you notice something's going on, there are some differences you're seeing with your child, and the sooner we can get an answer kind of for what's going on, the sooner we can start supporting that child appropriately. Because if we
Okay.
don't know what's going on, it's hard to know what approach to take and how to move forward to support that child's needs. So absolutely, the sooner the better. When parents are noticing differences with their child and they're thinking, okay, I think something's going on, but I just don't know,
Hmm.
talk to your healthcare provider. Book that appointment with
Okay.
your pediatrician. They might give some pushback and say, oh, you're overthinking. I hear this all the time from parents. They're
Yeah.
told, you're overthinking it. You're obsessing over this one thing. Don't worry about it yet. We'll wait and see, the wait and see approach. But I
Right.
recommend keep going with what you have to say. Keep advocating. Nothing is stronger than a mom's gut. So if you
Right.
have a
So
gut
true.
feeling, yeah, if you have a gut feeling that something's there and you need an answer and you just don't know the answer yet, keep going, because the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So keep
Okay.
advocating until somebody listens to you. And then, of course, the sooner we get a diagnosis, the sooner we can start supports and services.
Okay. So if you have a mom who has, or a dad who has kind of a gut feeling, and their pediatrician does kind of like, write them off a little bit, do they next seek out the help of someone like you, or where's their next logical step to go outside of their pediatrician?
Yeah, so they can definitely reach out to me, and I can help them advocate in a way. I hate saying this, kind of in a way that people will take them seriously, because
Hmm.
I see it all the time where a parent is advocating to a physician, or they're advocating to their child's school IEP team, and they're
Right.
requesting X, Y, and Z because they're seeing something lacking in certain areas. So they keep trying to advocate, and they're not taken seriously. And
Yeah.
once I work with these parents who help them kind of with the verbiage and the correct language, people start to tune in, and people
Gotcha.
unfortunately start to pay attention to them then, which is, I hate that it's that way, and I hate that it has
Yeah.
to get to the point. But I just say, keep going, keep reaching out to people, ask for a referral, ask your pediatrician if there's another pediatrician in your local area who is more familiar with developmental disabilities.
Okay.
Just keep asking questions. If you have a gut feeling, you have to follow your gut.
Okay. And what are some of the, are there any kind of signs, telltale signs or signs, for mom, especially COVID right now, right? There's not, I mean, varying degrees depending on where you are in the country. But I know I used to take my little ones to the library, and, that was the only place we saw their kids, or wherever it may be. But with a lot of people home or a lot of first-time parents, what are some of those signs that you would recognize that they should be looking for, or that they should be noting if they do happen to recognize it in their children?
Yeah, and again, this is something that could also be a huge long list of things, but every kid might not show these little traits here and there. So you could see your child reach a milestone and regress. You could see your child really struggling to interact with others, pay attention, respond to their name, respond to eye contact, respond to requests. We could see a kid who is really struggling with communication skills and unable to communicate their needs and their wants to those around them. We could see those stimming type of repetitive behaviors, the hand flapping, the maybe kids like, pressure, and they keep pinching themselves over and over to get that pressure, that sensation. Maybe, their repetitive behavior is something to do with the jaw and getting input there. So they're biting things, putting things in their mouth, biting people everywhere around the house. It's going to be, like I could go on and on about the list, but you're like I said, you're going to notice something because of your mom gut or your dad gut, not discounting the dads at all. But my best tip of advice is, once you notice something and once you're starting to question something, immediately seek out help from your physician, from your pediatrician. Because, I hear parents all the time, especially right now, because they're so backed up with COVID. People are on wait lists so long just to get assessed. And, like I said, the sooner we get assessed and we get a diagnosis, the sooner we start services and the right supports for that kid. I mean, I talk to parents who, they're on a wait list just to have the assessment over a year long. And I just, it breaks my heart that the system is so backed up and the system is so broken with giving parents answers right now.
Yeah, no, it's really true. So what do doctors diagnose? How do they diagnose autism? Is it a battery of behavioral tests? Is it a kind of all-encompassing physical, like I'm sure there are flashcards. I don't know. What does that test look like?
So the pediatrician's most likely going to refer the parent out, maybe to a psychologist, maybe to a
developmental pediatrician?
Yes, actually, I can't think of the word.
Yep.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So they're most likely going to refer you out to somebody who's a little more specialized, and then your child's going to be assessed. There are tons of different types of assessments out there, but it's really going to be behavioral based. Somebody's going to be playing with your child, interacting with your child, and really observing their behaviors. And they're looking for information in 3 particular areas. That social interaction, that communication, those communication skills, and they're looking for that restricted, repetitive behavior. And, autism, there's a lot of, so I don't know how to say this, but it's not something that's diagnosed in a lab under a microscope. There's no clear yes or no answer. And that's part of what makes autism confusing to others as well, I think, because the assessment process can be very subjective. It's very opinion-based, based on the person who is giving the assessment.
Right.
And essentially, they're going through this checklist. I mean, I don't want to minimize the evaluation process.
It's a very long list of questions.
They're going through this assessment, this checklist of those 3 areas. Does this kid fall behind and have a deficit in social interactions with their communication skills, and are they engaging in these repetitive behaviors?
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. It's really interesting because I have a gap in my kiddos, and early on, really kind of the litmus test for autism or any spectrum disorder was, from what I was told, which is not necessarily correct, was lining things up, or not having empathy.
Okay, this
and I
is a
just
total misconception. I'm gonna
super,
say
right? That
no.
I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing that that was, 13 years ago.
Somebody put that out there, and yes, there are autistic individuals who line things up, absolutely, and they'll put things in particular order, but that's not a qualification for being autistic. That's not a big indicator. I think about my nephew who is not autistic, and one of my cousin's sons who's not autistic either. Both of those little boys, when they were around 3, they would line things up. And I can't tell you how many times I had family members ask, are they autistic? Are they
Right?
autistic?
I know.
Should they
I
get
know.
tested? And I'm like, no, just like somebody put it out in the world. If kids line things up, they're absolutely autistic. And that's
Yeah. Well, it's nice to see that things have evolved. So if you have a parent who has listened to his or her gut and has actually received a diagnosis of autism, what next? What do you recommend? It is a journey, and so what would you say are the next steps and important steps to do for them?
Yeah, so you have the diagnosis. This is great. It means we have answers, and it means it's a starting point. Then
Sure.
I would start reaching out for support, because this is the time you're going to start building your child's support team. And in the beginning, your support team during the diagnostic process is going to be like friends and family members. And your support team is always evolving over time, because your child's developing, moving on, progressing, and evolving as well. So it's going to, be teachers and therapists, different physicians, different counselors, different therapists, an autism consultant maybe. You're going to meet these people over time who are going to serve your child's needs when you're in that period of time. One great starting point, well, whoever does the assessment could probably point you in the right direction of different therapies in your local area that you might want to get your child in. But then also, you can find services in your area in 2 ways. You can reach out to your local health department and just ask them, hey, what paid and free resources are in my area? And then also reach out to your local school district. Even if your child is not enrolled in school, call the special ed department of that district, someone high up in the special ed department, and say, hey, what supports and services are out there in my area that I can take advantage of? Because those people have a wealth of knowledge about what's going on around us in our community as far as supporting individuals with disabilities.
Great. That's great news. Okay, so if folks, parents have the diagnosis, they start reaching out to build their team. Is there any kind of things that they can do to support their child at home as they're learning? Because they're putting more tools in their tool boxes, right, as they start this journey. But is there anything that you have kind of like overall, this is the frame of mind, these are the general ways that you approach, if you approach the child differently now that you have a diagnosis? What would you say about that?
So one really easy way to put a support into place at home is to create a visual rich environment. Lots of visuals. I have examples.
Oh, okay.
That's great. Ooh, I don't have enough room in the screen. Different visuals. So one thing that we know about autistic individuals is that they have a strength in visual processing. Remember, autism is very brain-based. It's going to affect everything the child processes from what they take in, and then that's going to directly impact the output as well, how they respond. So we know that they have a strength in visual processing. So if we send a kid 2 different messages, 2 completely different messages, one message we send them visually with a picture, and one message we send verbally, we're speaking it, the child is most likely going to interpret, comprehend, and process the visual message that you send a lot quicker than the verbal message. Why? Because there's a strength there. Now, I'm not saying stop talking to your child. Still keep exposing them to speech and, new information, but we really want to add in visual support. And so if a parent's thinking, where do I even start? There are probably a million visual supports. The first starting point, the easiest, I recommend a visual schedule. So I hope you can see this.
Yeah, we can see that. It's backwards, but we can see. Just hold it up long enough for us to process it backwards.
Yes, so
to do and all done.
A clear indicator of what the expectations are, and they're in order. So
Sure.
we also know that autistic individuals, they struggle with executive functioning difficulties. And that just means brain management skills.
Sure.
Things like you and I, we get up in the morning and we think, okay, I have to shower, I have to brush my teeth, I have to get ready, I have to go run by the bank, then I have to stop at CVS and pick up that prescription, then I have to do X, Y, and Z. We
Sure.
think about that in our mind, and then we go in order and actually implement those steps.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have someone who is autistic, who has executive functioning differences, and that's going to look a little different. They have a weakness there, so it's not going to be as easy. Something like this makes them so they can still be independent. We organize their day for them. We make it visual so they can comprehend it easier. And then we teach them to implement and become independent with using a support like this. So now we think about a child going through their, this is a morning routine. So we think about a child going through their morning routine. We have two options here. Option one is mom is reminding that kid every step to do. Option two, we use a support like this. And after the teaching process, after the child starts to show success, mom starts fading out. And eventually, mom just hands her son the morning visual schedule. And when he's, 10, 11, 12, you hand him this in the morning and he's able to get ready on his own, go through step by step, just like his same age peers. Yeah. Does it look a little different? Maybe. Yeah, because he has this. But he's now able to be independent and successful without mom hovering over his shoulder, telling him everything to do, and he doesn't have to rely on a person to be successful.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's great. So what can you just take us through the morning routine in pictures, what they are?
Oh, well, yours will look very different. Everybody's morning routine looks a little bit different.
Sure. But just as an example. Yeah,
this one's breakfast, get dressed, brush your teeth, trampoline time, get on the bus.
Nice.
So once they engage in the first activity, once they're complete, they move it over to all done. So that's another visual cue. Once we move this over, that's another visual cue to the child to move on to
the next step.
Yes,
yeah, that's great.
Top square. So just move it over.
Yeah.
And then I have another example. This will be harder because it's bigger. So this is like a racetrack. So this is still a visual schedule, but let's say this plain, simple template isn't cutting it. Let's say the child is not intrigued at all, they're not engaging in it, and it's just, mom's trying over and over, it's not working. So maybe we need to mix it up and have some fun with it. So let's create a racetrack. So, we have brush teeth, sensory time, story time, video games. These are just random ones,
Sure.
But you can make it into a racetrack and go down to the finish line.
Yep. Excellent. Yeah. Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, is there any particular way that you would want to child-proof your home differently for an autistic child
so
that you can think of?
I don't know that you would child-proof differently. I think, think of a neurotypical child who is not autistic. Every home might child-proof their home a little bit differently. I think it would be the same with autistic kids. It's just, what does your kid need? What do you need to, do to keep them safe within your home? And, you're just going to make your moves. You're just going to make your plan based on that.
Okay. So any kind of overarching, more visual was something that I certainly picked up on. Any other major differences that we can think about in buckets for an autistic child versus a non-autistic child that can help a parent who's maybe trying to figure out both, if they have one of each, and what extra support they need to provide to their autistic child versus their non?
Yeah. So another tip is a lot of times I hear from parents, we're not moving on to skills. We're not learning new skills because him or her, they're just not picking up on it. So I want parents to take a step back and simplify things, make things more manageable for your child, because sometimes they look at the big picture of something and it's too big, it's too overwhelming, it's not manageable for your child. So take that skill, break it down. In special ed, we call chunking. We chunk the information.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Into smaller pieces. We see success and we move on. So think of like sharing. Sharing is a skill that we need to teach a kid to do. So the average person might think, well, we can't break sharing down any more than what it is. You just hand the toy over. No, that's not true. First,
Yeah.
you're given a verbal direction to share what blah, blah, blah. So you have to recognize that. You have to pay attention to that. Then you have to be able to give up physical possession of that item. Then you have to be able to see something else and engage with something else in your environment that's going to keep you occupied and, you know, keep you intrigued in something else. So there still are smaller steps that we can work on with something like that, but just breaking it down. And, you know, maybe the first step you work on with your child who you want to teach them to share, it's just releasing an item from their possession. You know, all day long you're saying, and you might start with things that don't even matter, you know, a spoon. David, can you hand me the spoon? David doesn't care about a spoon, but he's practicing the skill of passing things over from his possession to somebody else's. You do that all day long. You do it with different items, and then you slowly maybe move up to things that matter a little bit more. David, can you hand me your bread block? You know, sometimes he plays with the blocks. Then maybe he has another toy he likes. Then you start practicing with that as well. But pretty much every skill, we can break it down and make it more manageable for your child. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I thank you so much, Molly. I mean, we could go on forever. This is super interesting. I've learned so much. And I think overall, I love just some of the highlights of this. I love the flower analogy, right? Because it's just looking at the environment and watching this beautiful flower grow and optimizing that ability, right? And I just think it's awesome. And there's so many things that I could relate to. Like, I do much better when it's like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, this is so it resonates with me. And I just, you know, I think the overarching thing, we did something with a pediatric physical therapist. And it was really the sooner the better, the same message, the sooner the better, right? Because we just get more tools in our toolbox to be the best parent to help steward our little kids through this world, right? And so I think it's not anything to be afraid of. This is awesome. And it's just amazing little humans with amazing skill sets that we just have to learn how to figure out how to be the best parent we can.
Absolutely. And, you know, the last tip that I want to leave for parents is ask questions like crazy. Meet more people, talk to more people, ask more questions, because we don't learn by just staying silent. We learn by asking the questions of things, topics that apply to us at home. The more you ask, the more information you're going to get, which means the more changes you could maybe see at home, changes for the good to support your child.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I appreciate your time, and I know everyone on here appreciates you. They now have a resource that they may not have known before, which is excellent. So if anyone has a further question for Molly, please visit her, the Autism Consultant. Yeah, reach out, and maybe we'll get to do another one and pick up where we left off at some point in the future. Absolutely. So I really appreciate your time, Molly.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I enjoyed this.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.